We're on a different song now, but we basically have left off in the same exact spot where we had left off on the previous song, where we have to still track a bass DI, we have to reamp the guitars, we have vocals to track and edit and tune, and then put the mixing touches on it. So let's give a brief rundown of what's going on for bass here. I've already created the 2 tracks. One is just for the main DI signal we're going to capture. The second is just for the ease of editing. If I need to just track something real quick and swap it up, I could do that with playlisting as well, but it's just a workflow thing for me. And for right now, actually we're probably going to use this in the mix, but we're using this plugin called Parallax by Neural DSP, which is just awesome for bass. With bass, it's really easy to lose low-end control, especially when the room is not built for it. And what this plugin does is it ensures that you get a mono signal in your mix. And it also splits up into 3 bands, whereas the low end is just focused on level and compression, low-pass filter. The mid-band is a mid-band distortion, drive, and level for the mid-band. And then for the highs also, there's a high-pass and the high and distortion and high level. So extremely versatile. You can really get the tone you're going for, but yeah, this isn't a Neural DSP video, but I'm talking up this plugin a lot. It is a great plugin. And then as far as bass wise, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, it's a Sterling, it's a Stingray. It's actually my brother's bass. Really good, solid bass. We used it on the last song too.
It sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
It delivers a great amount of highs and clarity of the note, So, I'm excited to track with this, and I guess we just start rolling,
Yeah, sounds good.
Track the entire bass this way. There's a slight latency at the moment because we're running buffer size at 1024, so I'm going to switch that to 256. Let me just restart Pro Tools.
Yeah,
all right.
Definitely.
2 bars and then we'll start off.
You got it. Grit setting going on just to work off of, and for a heavier tune I find that one to be like particularly good.
And that's just a stock preset, like you didn't do anything to that.
I just opened it up. I knew that one would work well with it. But another thing I wanted to mention is when we start off tracking a song, it's not likely to just run all the way through a song, but I like to, as a first take, run the song all the way through to get the artist's perspective on what they're trying to do on the song. And then if there's any suggestions we want to make, then we go through and we can punch in little details. But overall, man, you killed it. It was a super tight take. It sounded really good.
I think I messed up the intro a little bit. We'll have to redo the intro. Like a couple parts I want to redo.
Yeah. Why don't we listen back and I guess I had a couple pointers more in the intro than anything. I think,
the intro, when I first wrote it, I was not using the hammer-ons for the bass.
Okay, you're talking about like right around here.
Yeah. Because I do hammer-ons when I play the guitar, but I don't usually play the bass, so I had to write bass parts for this. So
that part.
Yeah,
okay,
that part didn't make sense.
I
had it. Hang on.
I was gonna suggest also, like, you have like. I was even gonna suggest leaving that out on the bass and let the guitars just handle that, because if you're just sticking to the root note on the bass, it might translate a little better.
Okay.
So between that and the hammer-ons, I think that would clean up that whole section.
Okay.
When the toms come in like that, you can start walking it a little bit too, like a little quarter note. Maybe that's up to you if you want to do that. Okay, and then just a few more suggestions. I'm going to go through everything.
That intro is very loosely written.
Okay.
So you can tear it apart, because I don't normally play bass.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. Just a couple things would like really make it nice, though.
Okay.
I like the rung out note there. All these crash cymbal chokes should have a staccato note with it. You know, I could even replace that with these.
I did it on other
I could even grab those and make that part with what we have here. When this drum part kicks in here, I was going to suggest maybe doing the eighth notes, or in this case, the click track is like 240, 250.
Yeah, it's fast.
Let's check it. 240, yeah. So eighth notes at a quarter note BPM of 240 would be, So maybe like when the drums kick in, like doing that with the drums would be really a nice effect for the bass to kick in doing that also.
So you want eighth notes there?
Yeah, like. Exactly, something like that.
Okay.
And then, that was basically it, except for one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
On this section, so what you played will actually work, because I'm planning on sidechaining, using sidechain compression from the kick drum to the bass, either way. You know what that is. It's basically like, every time the kick drum hits,
the bass goes down just a tiny bit.
Okay.
It's gonna trigger a compressor, which essentially turns the volume of the bass down, but it also adds a bit of a pump and rhythmic feel to the bass.
Okay.
But one thing on this part is, if you listen to Greg's drum part, it's like so if you can incorporate that rhythm with the kick drum,
okay,
but essentially play the same. Yeah, something like that. I think it might lock in with the groove a little bit tighter.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, that was really it. I mean,
okay.
I don't know if you want to try punching in sections, or you want to just
run
run the song from the top one more time, because I think
you
do definitely have it tight enough, so. means that if you stretch the wave, it's going to basically change the quality of the wave more so. So I'm gonna refrain from doing any of that at all, and actually resort to cutting the wave physically and moving things around. So everything here looks right on the grid. I mean, it's cool.
Oh, you got video on the other track.
Yeah. Do you want to use parts from the other track on this section?
No. I thought I heard it.
Oh, no. It's there. I'm going to also grab this note here, place it at the open. Right there. And then tempo change. So we're going to get that staccato hit there. I like this one. It's got a lot of energy to it. So place one there. Place one here. Replace that hit. It's a little weaker. Cool. Cool. This is good. The important part with moving waves like this is to really ensure that you're getting the attack of the note, because you can lose that really easily. So that's the main thing I'm looking out for in doing and editing the bass this way. So another thing I'm noticing right off the bat too is when Cameron's playing some of the busier parts, there's almost too many highs with the way the settings are on the parallax right now. So I'm going to go in and control, just dial those down a little bit, specifically on the high levels, like extreme. This bass particularly brings out that characteristic a lot, so you should blend in the mix a lot. Make sure that hits right on the beat. Get that the eighth notes coming in right at the beginning. No, I know. I'm trying to look through the mesh.
We need to get these
to see where I might place the mic.
So what are these two microphones again?
So we got the classic 57, and I'm going to use a second KM184. But the way I'm positioning these mics is very, very specific. So it's actually like at the point where the cone and the cap meet, and actually, like, the whole concept behind this is if you set up the mic and you run pink noise through the cab, then as you move the mic up and down, you'll hear more highs if you go towards the center, and you'll hear more lows as you go to the edge. So you want to find that medium spot on the first mic. Now the second mic, this is another huge thing. You want to get it positioned to almost exactly the same spot. Now, the positioning on this KM184, what I really like about it is that it's a smaller diaphragm mic. So it allows me to get it closer to the SM57. And what that does is if you're listening through this cab with pink noise, in my case, I'm running both of these through the knobs over here, right? So if we're feeding pink noise through the cab, and I go here and I flip the phase on the KM184, as I'm listening to these microphones, you'll hear that as you get it to the perfect position, it'll almost completely cancel out. Like, listen with headphones, and you'll hear it almost completely cancel out. When you unflip the phase, then all of a sudden you get all the tone from the speaker. Now, the reason I'm choosing this speaker, there's several reasons also, because it's the first speaker wired from the input. So it's the least path of resistance. I also think it sounds a little better.
Do you know what kind of speaker is on
these
this?
Are the Mesa Vintage 30s in a Marshall 1960 cab. So Marshall 1960, there's another one down there, is particularly really awesome. I've mic'd so many different cabs. The reason I like this one so much, I don't know, there's some sort of characteristic to this where I think it actually has to do with the distance of the mesh from the actual speaker. So because of how it's placed, when you mic this cab up, it's just like the optimal positioning for miking up a guitar cab, and the wood that it's encased in and everything, it's just like the guitar reamp cab,
And you said,
in my opinion.
and you said this is a V30 speaker you're miking?
Right, but not a Celestion V30. I mean, it's a Mesa V30 specifically. So I believe it's a slightly. It's a kind of a unique sound, but it sounds really nice in this cab. And then we're gonna run that through the PV Invective, which is also just like a perfect reamp amp. Those settings are kind of not the settings we're going to be working with, but I'll get that dialed in just a sec.
And at what volume do you like the speaker blasting?
It's going to be like loud. The whole reason is we want to actually get the tubes in the amp. You know, we want to get some of that tube breakup and saturation. There's a characteristic to tube amps. When you drive them, it really gets them to sing, and you can't really replicate that. It's the main reason for reamping as opposed to using something, plugins nowadays. We basically split up all the guitar DIs, right? And currently I'm running the Archetype Gojira plugin. This has a placeholder to give a feel for the distortion and sustain for tracking. So what we're going to do now is I've created 2 tracks after each DI signal. So here's the first guitar, here's the double for the first guitar part, here's Cameron's guitar DI for the rhythms, and then his double. And after each DI you can see that there's 2 tracks, and that's for the 2 mics, the 57 and the KM184. So now, a couple of really important things to consider before feeding this out, right? Just as a breakdown, the signal comes out of the guitar as an unbalanced signal. You take that, plug it into a DI. Just like in this case, we use this, the Neve 517 Portico, and it has the RN DI built in. The DI essentially converts the signal from an unbalanced signal to a balanced signal. We then edit on Pro Tools. This is another neat trick. Pro tip is that when you're editing a DI signal, the transients are a lot more visible than when you have a distortion signal from an amped, mic'd guitar amp. So you can edit it a lot easier. It's nice to have some sort of reference like the Gojira plugin or any amp simulator just to get an idea of what the playing actually sounds like with a little distortion on it. So anyways, once it's all tracked and edited, then we set this up. We got the 2 tracks set up. You want to make sure that your amp simulator is off, first of all, otherwise you're going to feed distortion into an amp, which does not sound pretty. Then you want to also make sure that your level is set to 0, and that is because when you capture the DI, it's really important that it's captured at -6 to -8 decibels. So that's a key component in this whole recording process, because that'll resemble your guitar actually being plugged into the amp when you feed this signal into the amp. So that's a very important part of the process. That's also why we're setting this to 0 right now. Then on the 57 and KM184, we're going to obviously make sure the inputs are selected. In this case, the 57 is input 5, KM184 is input 6. And then output is going to be output 3. And what's going on with the output here is everything's hooked up to this interface at the moment, the RME Fireface 802. Output 3 is in the back, and it's going to this reamp box. This reamp box is then going to the PV Invective. And what the reamp box does is, we were talking about the, going in as an unbalanced signal into the DI. DI balances the signal. The reamp box unbalances the signal. So now, when you feed that into the amp, you're going to get a nice clean sound as if the guitar is playing in the room without extra hissing and, you know, unneeded garbage, basically. So anyways, we got that going into the amp, and this amp is plugged into this cab, which we have these two mics set up on. These two mics are now going into each shelfer channel. Use these because Class A preamps, they sound incredible, especially on guitars. I like to utilize those for anything I'm using, drum overheads or guitar amps or bass. We use that to process vocals. I process all the buses with those. So it's a very powerful tool for me in this setup. Yeah, so that basically covers the signal chain of how we're setting up the guitar tone. At the moment, we're just feeding the signal through the amp, and we're going to dial in a couple things. I also have the amp at a low volume setting at the moment, just so we can speak and talk about what's going on here. So, we're not recording signal. The beauty of this whole process is the fact that rather than focusing on the playing, since everything's edited already, we can really just focus on shaping the guitar tone to be exactly what we want on the mix, and take it from there. If there's too many highs or if there's too many mids, after everything's tracked and doubled and panned left and right, then we can just feed the signal back out and get a different tone or use a different amp or whatever we want to do. So this is really like the major advantage of reamping. We're going to run this signal and just kind of see where we're at. Right off the bat, I think there's too many highs. I was using this for a different session that called for that. But we're going to tone that down. I'll tone that down. We'll roll back a little bit on the presence. A little bit more on the resonance. We have the gain pretty low. And the beautiful thing about this amp is it has a built-in boost channel. The boost channel basically is like a distortion pedal in front of the preamp. Turn up the tone a little bit. Another nice thing to do here is to keep the gain relatively low. You almost want it like a little bit lower than you would have it as if you were playing in the room, because when you stack the doubles, it kind of like multiplies the amount of gain, that the perceived gain between all the guitars. So, general rule of thumb is to try to keep the gain low, like low gain is tone. So, low gain, have a little bit of the drive from the boost, and then right now it's also low volume, so as I turn this up, the tube saturation is going to give it a slightly different characteristic. The amp's going to sing more, that's a good sound metaphor for that, I guess. Another thing to make sure is, I'm going to start dialing in the level. The KM184 is a condenser mic, so it requires phantom power. Power that right now. And I want to make sure that the levels between these two mics is even. And that plays a role in the phase canceling I was talking about earlier as well. Because if the level is even, that's essentially going to be like the blend that you want to use between both mics. Watch the levels raise on the meters as I'm turning up the... right in front of the cab at high level. At this point, you usually just hit record and walk out of the room. So we'll do that. It was showing up a little bit louder on the 57 than the KM184, while the meters on the Neves showed that they were, exactly the same volume. So like, that's something to consider with analog equipment. Like, you know, voltmeters might display slightly different levels, and that's normal. It's, you know, it's analog equipment. It's just something to consider on how things work. So it's always good to double check your gain staging between Pro Tools on the digital side and the analog side, and that's like another really important rule to kind of consider during this whole process. So now we basically got all the guitars reamped, and this is one of the best parts of this whole process is when you first listen back.
Yeah, that's cool.
If you know that it's set up right, and it is set up right, and just it's really rewarding to hear this part of the process because the way everything falls together. So again, with Cameron's guitars, we have the DI1, DI2. I'm gonna pan his reamp signals left and right. Left on the first one, right on the second one. And I'm assuming that the levels right now, they're not balanced or they're gonna be loud. But what I'm gonna do is take guitar 1 DI and guitar 2 DI, so these 4 mic signals, and send them to their own stereo bus. One really important thing to understand is when you initially mic these sources from the cab, there's supposed to be a little bit of extra low end, and that's where you get that kind of cab oomph from, you know, like the movement of the air. So a good way to combat that rather than just EQing that completely out of the equation is to multiband compress the low end. And what I do is just a little light compression of the low end, 0 to 150, 150 to 400 area. You see it here. Immediately just brings out so much room for the bass, and now I can just kind of adjust these according to where the drums and bass are already at. Sounds so clean and clear, you know?
It sounds awesome.
Yeah. Alright, so we got everything set up with the U87. It's also important, if you look, I have the U87 angled down a little bit, and that really focuses on like the whole throat area to capture like the low end of what he's going to be singing. So I got a signal going into his headphones right now, but I want to try to turn the volume on that as far down as possible without hindering his take. So the reason for that is when I end up compressing the signal that this mic is going to capture, I don't want to get bleed from the headphones going into the microphone. And this is more important for vocals than any other capture or instrument, you know. Drummers like clicks blasting in their ears and, you know, full volume, but the drums themselves are so loud that relative to that, it's basically irrelevant. So we get everything set up with the headphones. We got the headphones volume here. Why don't we test it out and make sure you can hear yourself, everything's good. We're not going to hear anything out here because it's all in his headphones. And honestly, we hear some of the bleed right now, so we'll try turning this down and see if he's okay with that.
I'm the serpent of sin, saving the fallen and lifting the weak. Life will truly begin. Hardship will soften, gain what you seek. What will you give? What will you offer to me? Walk with me now.
We're gonna cut it just for now. It sounds really good. So what I'm gonna do here is because there's a big difference between when he's hitting the higher octave on those vocals. We have a built-in compressor into the Portico, and it's an optical compressor. It's ideal for vocals. So I'm gonna dial that back, the threshold back on that a little bit, and you know, I'm gonna go one notch lower on the preamp, and I think that should be a very healthy level to work with. It didn't even clip, but I just want to make sure we're not getting any. I don't want to drive the preamp too hard either on this process because we're gonna run it through limiting amplifiers and optical compressors and diode bridge compressors and all of that after the fact. So
morals will harden, gain what you seek. The time has come again. What will you offer to me? I am the voice that's inside of your head. I am the voice that says kill all your friends. Hey, walk with me now. Fuck.
all good, all good.